Hello and welcome. I'm Omar Sallam and this is the Product.Live. When I first started this podcast, I was trying to work on, what kind of guests I would be able to get. I was skimming through my network, trying to find guests that I would really like to get on the podcast. And then I thought, the best thing that I want to do is to interview Marty Cagan. And I just had this crazy idea to try to get his contact from the SVPG website and reach out to him and, see what happens. Surprisingly, like 3 hours later, he responded and he graciously agreed to be on the podcast. So without further ado, I give you today, one of the best moments that I've been waiting for since the podcast started. I'm hosting the widely known godfather of modern product management, the owner of the trilogy Inspired, Empowered, and Transformed, Marty Cagan. Marty, hello and welcome, and thank you so much for making the time and giving me the opportunity to have the discussion with you today.
Well, thanks for inviting me, Omar. Glad to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I want to jump right into it. And of course, when we scheduled this interview, it was before Transformed was published. And I had a couple of things in mind that I wanted to discuss or ask you about. And then we could definitely always refer to the book and how it answers maybe these questions. But I wanted to start with you with the question of product management itself. How do you see it between a theoretical science that has some definitions, some frameworks, something to be taught maybe academically somehow, but also from the other side, it might be an art, something that depends on a lot of skill, a lot of interpersonal skills or talents that needs to be there and the calibers that could be qualified to do product management? Is it more something that to be taught or something that has based on talent, or is it a mix of both?
It's not a straightforward answer because there isn't one definition of product management. That's the bigger issue.
Okay,
the bigger
cool.
issue is there are multiple definitions of product management. I would like to believe that everybody agreed with my definition, but honestly, my definition, which is just not really mine, it's the one that I learned and I see used in the top product companies, but it is very different from what most companies use. So if the company has feature teams, we call them feature teams, where it's classic, they're given a roadmap of features to build, then the people called product managers have a very different job than they do in an empowered product team. So now, don't get me wrong, I don't think either job is particularly easy, but they are totally different. In a feature team, it's much more project management. That's the heart of it. And project management, like any job, really, it's a mix. There are some techniques for sure, but there's also a lot of interpersonal skills because you're communicating like crazy. You're managing dependencies. You're trying to manage conflicts. So project management is not easy, but that's not product management. Product management is discovering a solution worth building. In fact, it's kind of ironic to me because product management is all about product discovery, but project management is all about product delivery. So they're not even closely related roles, but in so many companies they are. If you want to talk about what I call product management, what's described in those 3 books, then I would argue, yes, it's a mix of science and art. By the way, so is engineering. Definitely so is design. Design is probably the best example of that. So I don't know. It's normal. It doesn't bother me, but I do think there are a lot of skills that you learn. I was taught many skills and I've learned many more over the years. And then there's a lot of art. And I will say, as I get older, I appreciate the art more and more because there's, like, where do you put politics in there?
Yeah.
Politics kind of can mess up anything. And, as you get better at managing people and understanding everybody's motivations and trying to find ways to make it a win-win, I would call that art.
Hmm.
And I would call it also very important. So that exists. But even a surgeon has this sort of, they've got to manage the stress level of their patients. There's bedside manner. So I think this is pretty common that there's a mix.
Okay, great. But do you think that, of course, we could imagine that, the theoretical side or the science side of things could be taught because it's definitions, it's frameworks, and so on. But the artistic side and the more, creative side of it, how do you see something like this could be taught, starting from people that are trying to self-develop and self-learn things in order, to enhance their personal development, and going up to managers and coaching that are trying to coach their teams and so on. And I've recently started also seeing your new podcast with Christian and Audi, and recently we're talking about how to coach product sense, right? So something that volatile, something that squishy, how to actually in a structured way, how to teach it or how to develop in it somehow.
Well, that's why. So personally, I believe strongly that you can teach the uh, the the art side as well as the science side. Not only can you do that, that's the job of a manager is to do
Hmm.
that. Literally, that is their
Yeah.
primary job. So uh, some things are easier than others. Like to me, it's not very hard to teach a product team, product manager, a designer, engineers about the 4 kinds of prototypes that you need to be good at. That's pretty straightforward. We can talk about the pros and cons of each kind. You can give them practice to let them create each kind. Great. You also have to do things like teach them the softer side, like how to influence people, how
Hmm.
to get people to listen to the argument and come up with a solution that might not be what they originally imagined. That's you mentioned Christian and I doing those podcasts. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to talk about examples of coaching some of the hard things. One of them is mindset. There's a whole mindset around product that is
Yeah.
really important. And that's very much art, not science. Or coaching,
Exactly.
like you said, product sense. Or one of the hardest ones we've ever tackled is coaching sense of agency. This is how well
Yeah.
people feel like in control of their own destiny.
Hmm.
So we were trying to share that we believe that that these things can be taught. And I just will mention, by the way,
Hmm.
it's Christian's podcast. He is
Yeah.
probably the most naturally gifted person at teaching people the soft skills that anybody I've ever met.
Yeah, well, I felt that because earlier I did an episode with him, and
Oh,
like
good.
just the flow in the conversation and how he was explaining things, like it resonated to me. Like, okay, if he was explaining or teaching me something else, like I would feel that at ease, and I would get it in a specific way. So, well, I really understood when I did that episode with him why he thought that he is one of the most brilliant product people. Um, and like touching on these different topics also, I want to ask you specifically about customer empathy and empathy in general. um, how not about teaching, not about explaining the importance of it, but how when you're managing a team and you're managing your stakeholders, a business unit, whatever, how do you foster a culture of empathy generally that would support this kind of ecosystem that you're trying to build, not just within the product team or within a product manager that you're working with, but the full ecosystem, including the stakeholders and so on.
The real issue, honestly, is most stakeholders are not the problem there. It's usually the engineers. And
Hmm.
that's a self inflicted wound because, in my experience, almost everybody is has the skills for empathy. Almost
Okay.
everybody. Obviously, there's some psychopaths out there that couldn't care less,
Of
but
course.
most people really do care
Mm,
and they want to care. The problem is that so many people, stakeholders, product managers, they think their job is to shelter their engineers
mhm,
from the users and customers. And that is one of the worst mistakes you can make. In fact, bringing your engineers to meet our users and customers not only develops their real empathy very quickly,
mhm.
but is incredibly motivating for them. So, no, is empathy important? Absolutely. Does almost everybody out there have the skills for empathy? Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, it's more when it doesn't happen, it's usually because someone is misguided. It
Okay.
might be the most common example where it doesn't happen is that the company outsources their engineers. And if they
Yeah.
do that, how in the world would those people in wherever they are, India, China, who knows where they are, how would they develop that empathy with our customers?
Yeah, and like they don't come with the background of like having a little bit of experience in that domain and with this customer segment or with this company. So they really need to build up a lot of knowledge and expertise before starting to develop some empathy. You cannot develop empathy in one day, right? I would say.
Actually, you can do a lot if you if you knowledge is different than empathy, right? It takes a lot longer to learn a space like domain than it does to understand that people are struggling and want to help them.
Yeah, but I just meant like in order for you to understand that people are struggling or to understand how to possibly help them, like you need to at least have access to some research, know previous cases of how we tried to help them and maybe we didn't
But you see
succeed,
the
what was
difference.
the impact and so on, right?
Do you see the difference? Empathy is like, okay, I can see our customers are struggling. You can
Ah,
usually see that in 5 minutes. If you're right
okay,
there, you can see it. How to fix it is much harder. How to
yeah.
fix it is not empathy. That's actually product skills.
Mm, yeah. Well, of course. Um, let's take from this and going into how to fix them, between how to identify and how to fix them. And I wanted to ask about what you mentioned earlier about your version of product versus others' versions of product. So basically, the more about product discovery versus product delivery, and the balance, or again, product teams, empower product teams versus feature teams. And I wanted to ask you specifically about what do you think is a right balance between both, because like both have to coexist somehow in order to, yes, discover a problem, ideate and innovate about a solution, and then to deliver, right? And I think that because like in my own experience recently, I've been working with a lot of platform teams, for example, where they are building infrastructure, they are building internal tools, they are building supporting functions and supporting solutions for other teams that are working on customer facing problems within an entity. So my customers are internal teams, actually. But sometimes when it comes to this kind of products or platforms or infrastructures, there is a lot of things that we know that we have to do. There's regulatory stuff, there is compliance stuff, migrations, technical things that we know that we have to deliver step by step in a manner that might seem like a feature team. But like my part of the job, I think that's my personal belief, and I'm hoping to get a comment from you on that to fix it if it's wrong, is that building a strategy around how we do that, picking the priorities, and how within doing all of these things that we have to do, that we still also think about customer centricity and how to deliver the best value and how to come up with innovation between working in a scope that could be, from an outsider view, considered like a very feature oriented. So what do you think within an organization that has both of these existences and they're trying to coexist? Is there a right balance between product discovery and product delivery, between empowered product teams and feature teams that are trying to work with a product mindset?
Yeah, let's talk about it. The whole purpose of, let me put it this way. If you have a feature team, there is no product discovery. They're already given the features to build. They're already given the solutions. That's what's on the roadmap. So there
Okay.
is you don't need a balance there because you've been given those things. You're just
Mm.
purely there to implement. It's largely a delivery team. Fine.
Okay.
But if you have a product team where the team is given problems to solve, then you need to make sure you come up with a solution worth building. And so it's not like balance between discovery and delivery. It's as soon as you've discovered a solution worth building, you build it. That might
Mm.
take a few hours. It might take a week. You don't know. It depends how
Mm-hmm.
hard the problem is. So we don't really frame it in terms of balance, like we have 2 hours for this today and 2 hours for that today. We frame it in terms of our job is to achieve an outcome the fastest way we can. All right. Now, you also brought up another issue, though, which is, you really brought up two other ones. One
Mm.
is every product team, whether it's a platform team or an experience team, doesn't matter. Every product team, if the product's in production, is going to have some amount of what most companies call keep the lights on work.
Yeah.
Some people call it business as usual. But these are lots of little things like we have to fix these 4 bugs. We have to. They're critical bugs. We need to fix them. Maybe somebody needs to triage and make sure they're critical, but we need to fix some bugs. We also have a bunch of things like compliance issues that we have no choice over. Like in the European Union, there's certain things you have to do around privacy, and you just can't argue that. You just have to knock it out. And stakeholders have little things like they need these reports changed, or because they can't run their business without this reporting that they need. And the data is in the product, so you need to get it. That's all normal. And that's not a feature team or a product team. That's just keep the lights on work. Every team has some amount of that. It's also true that platform teams generally have more of that than experienced teams because by definition they're a dependency.
Yeah.
Now we do, if a team is doing nothing but that, then they're obviously not going to be able to work on hard problems. They're just going to be knocking out those little keep the lights on things. Normally, what we like to say is if you're a platform team, no more than half your time is going to those keep the lights on things. And if you're an experienced team, no more than about a third of your time is going to those keep the lights on things. And if it gets out of balance, you may need more or less engineers to keep things in balance. That's not to be confused, because whether it's a feature team or an empowered product team, everybody has these keep the lights on things. The real difference between a feature team and an empowered product team is an empowered product team is also given one or maybe two serious problems to solve. And that's the main purpose of the team, is that, and that's what we do product discovery on. We wouldn't normally do product discovery on little, like, do we fix this bug or not? No, you just fix the bug. So it's just delivery work.
Okay, perfect. That puts it in perfect context for me. And speaking again about the contrast between these two definitions, the question I'm gonna ask is basically the essence of the book Transformed, as I understand it. But when you have a setup of a team or hierarchy or a department that was working in the way of how feature teams are operating, and they're trying to transform into the product operating framework, and they're trying to work as product empowered teams. Um, I want to ask specifically about the stakeholder management and shifting the mindsets of stakeholders in terms of ownership, because I would imagine, and also from experience, that um, there would be a lot of stakeholders feeling threatened that a lot of ownership is being taken away from them. And what I believe in is that moving to this model would mean that, ownership would be shared somehow, would be more collaboration with stakeholders. But what I'm asking about is how to manage the transition for the mindset of stakeholders not to feel that threatened and to fully understand why this transition is happening. How would you think? I know you wrote a whole book about it, but if we're trying to summarize the essence of what needs to be done here.
One word: trust. And what I mean by that is most transformations go wrong because the product organization is all about our stakeholders need to trust us more. Our stakeholders need to collaborate with us more. But they're not doing the part that's necessary for that to happen, which is to build their skills. If they're a feature team, they do not have the skills yet to get that collaboration you're talking about. So what I try to tell teams is, before you go to the stakeholders and worry about managing them, before you do that, improve your skills. You need to show the rest of the company and the stakeholders that you have earned that partnership. You have to realize, from their point of view, pretend you're a vice president of marketing. And all you've had to work with are a bunch of product owners. I'm using that term, right? Scrum certified product owners.
Yeah.
Any good VP of marketing that I have ever met would never trust those people. Those product owners have no training in what they need. They are not a partner. All they are is a backlog manager. So the responsibility here is on the leader of product to make sure that these product owners become true partners to the stakeholders. Most product leaders fail because they don't do that.
Yeah, fair enough. Speaking of a wider perspective here from an organizational level, when an organization is, again, trying to do this transition in different parts of the business, but there is different weights of empowerment across the business. So, of course, I think this happens with much bigger scales of companies where maybe some business units are more product focused and they are more empowered. Some other things, like, for example, product teams within marketing or something like that, might have some transitioning to do. But on an organizational level, from top leadership level, how do they manage the designing the topology of these teams that are moving or transitioning or being created, new ones of them, where it's an organization that has again both different types of teams, like product empowered teams and feature teams and teams in between that are working on platform that are trying to transition from this mindset to this mindset, and there's a lot of dependencies in such topology. What's your experience with that, and what would you advise at this
you just
situation?
described a typical medium to large company. That's how it is. They have they have multiple business units. They have multiple teams within those units doing different kinds of things. The way we recommend that is you need to treat each one independently. You need to understand. That's why, by the way, transformation takes years in a large organization, is because you have to work your way through the organization. Normally, we do an assessment for each business unit because each business unit effectively can be its own company.
Yeah.
especially if they were acquisitions. And a lot of big companies, they grew these business units because they acquired other companies. So you can't assume that just because in one part of the business it works one way, that it's going to work the same way in another part of the business. So we do an assessment, and then on a team by team basis, you do not want to try to transform a team unless that team is ready. You do, like we just talked about, you do not want to go to the stakeholders and ask them to change unless that team is ready.
Okay.
So we need to work our way through the organization, earning trust at every level in order to do that. And that's common. And there are challenges in every organization. It might be a lot of technical debt in one. It may be an acquired culture that's very different in another. It might be a very different kind of product in another. One might be a platform product. Another might be a internal tools products. Who knows? It's all over the place. So
Yeah.
you have to look at each of these independently and make a choice.
I really love how you establish that true empowerment is something that you really earn. It's not just demanded. It's not just something that is pushed from leadership, but to be truly empowered, you have to earn that trust with your stakeholders. I think that's a missing concept that maybe it's overseen most of the time. I want to move from here to giving some feedback about the book Transformed, if I may. So I want to really commend and say that it was a very good surprise when I found some use cases and examples, the real life examples from different countries in the world, because although inspired and empowered for me were really inspiring and empowering, but also it felt somehow, especially that I originally come from Egypt. I've worked all my life there in startups and VC funded companies, scale ups, and so on, that those two books represented the ideal world. They represented utopia. They were most of the examples were from Silicon Valley and top-notch companies and so on. But in Transformed, you presented examples and use cases from different countries of the world, from different markets, different regions, and so on. Although personally, I still think that some of them were still the top of the top in these areas, which would make sense because I think these would logically be the ones trying to get support from you or consultancy from you. But I really appreciated this fact. So I just wanted to ask you, for the examples that you mentioned, like Trainline or Al Musafer, for example, uh, why did you specifically choose these examples? And are there any other companies or use cases that you would recommend people to try to search for, or do some research around, because they will still give value that you were not able to put all of these cases in the book?
Yeah, well, you're right. I'm glad you noticed that too. Our goal, I mean, honestly, the reason to write Transformed was because so many people read Inspired and Empowered, but they didn't believe they could do it themselves.
Yeah.
And, my partners and I, you've met Christian. I don't know if you've met any other partners, but my
Not
partners
yet,
and I have
but I'm
been
planning to.
yeah, we've been working with companies all over the world for 20 years. So we knew that that wasn't true, but most of the world did not know that wasn't true. In fact, a lot of people thought not only was, they thought it wasn't possible.
Yeah.
And we knew better. So we decided, okay, well, we're going to write a book that just talks about how to change. And we're going to use examples from all over the world. We picked, South America and Brazil. We picked Middle East and Saudi Arabia. We picked the UK, London, Trainline. We picked the East Coast of the US. We picked very different areas in order to show that. And we also wanted to pick companies in many different industries, including regulated industries like healthcare. We wanted sales-driven industries like enterprise software, all of the reasons, because we've been hearing for honestly forever oh, you can't do this if you're outside of Silicon Valley, or you can't do this if it's enterprise software, or you can't do it if it's regulated industry, or you can't do it in other countries. I mean, we knew that wasn't true, but we wanted to show that. And uh, well, you asked, are there more examples? There are many more examples. However, I will also be the first to say, because I was the one doing most of the work for this book, getting any company to allow you to share their journey is hard.
Yeah.
Most companies don't want to share that. They are either because sometimes they're embarrassed that they're admitting they used to work that way. Sometimes it's they view it as their secret weapon.
Yeah, of course.
Is they can, and they don't want their competitors to know what they're doing. But the result is, it is a lot of work to get each company that's profiled, because you want to tell the true story, otherwise it's not useful, right?
Of course,
but you also don't want them to get upset. That you don't want them to sue you or anything like that. Remember, in the US, it happens all the time. And so we wanted to use real names, real companies. And I've been told, in fact, one of my friends was the head of product at Almost Software, and they, Ronnie Varghese, and he, people have reached out to him on LinkedIn and said, hey, I realize you're in Dubai now, or can I visit you? And it's like, it's wonderful. That's what we wanted to happen. But that's a lot of work. Now, hopefully there are enough cases in that book that almost everybody finds a company very similar to them. That was the idea. The only other thing I'd say, Omar, is if a company is looking for a reason not to transform, it's easy to find. You can always say, oh, well, but you're not a healthcare company in my part of the world. And so it does. And so if that's what somebody's looking for,
of course,
they're gonna find any excuse they want. But I think if somebody does want to transform, they will hopefully find examples that will give them confidence that they can succeed.
Yeah. Where there's a will, there is a way, of course. So if that's that's a great value to drive out of this, and actually, like, it's the main value that I wanted to come out with asking you about other examples as well. I want to relate to this also, if I may suggest something. I don't know if it's doable even or not, because it's great that you guys and you especially are writing these books based on your experiences and your own work. But I believe that in order to be more and more relatable as you go, being more in touch with markets that it's more challenging to build something, or to more challenging to adopt technology, where it's more challenging to apply product management because it's not that widespread yet, and so on. And also going deeper into more of earlier stage companies, or less funded companies, and so on. Like when I hosted Christian, for example, we were talking about the difference of applying product management between USA, Europe, and Africa, for example. Since I'm from Egypt, he's from Nigeria. And the hurdles and the extra challenges that product people have to go through during product discovery, for example, to make sure that they are building a solution that could survive and could actually drive value to customers. I think there's a lot of like success stories that if you ever have the time or the investment or anything to start digging deeper into stories outside of what you've already consulted, maybe you'd find some very inspiring examples. I don't know if that's doable again or not. I'm just suggesting that maybe that there's something extra out there that with your expertise and with your knowledge and with your very like trusted brand right now could be maybe highlighted if more discovery is done. Do you think that's a compelling thing for you
Yeah,
or
I
not?
don't know if you already know about this, but last year, Christian put on the first large product conference for Africa. There were
I heard
1,000
about that.
product people from all over the continent.
Yeah,
And we all met in Lagos. All of the partners were there. I was there. The other partners were there. We all came, and it was absolutely amazing. I had more.
yeah,
It was both very inspiring, but also just the people were so impressive. And by the way, for product people like us, it's a great place to be because there are opportunities everywhere. They
of
need
course.
these skills so much all across the continent. In fact, Christian has announced we're going back in a few months. We'll be there in October for the second big conference, and it's his plan is to do that every year. Every other year in Nigeria, and on the off year in different parts. He's going to go to Rwanda the year after this one, next year. And so I'll be there as long as I can because I absolutely love it. But there are great examples coming out of Africa already.
Yeah,
And we're even doing a special coach the coaches session to find and develop more coaches in Africa. So I mean, I view Africa as one of the great opportunities in the world. Uh, and so that's why we're doing this.
well, from my side, from my region of North Africa, I could tell you amazing stories about companies and startups in Egypt and Morocco. And like, if there's any chance I could contribute to these initiatives that Christiana is leading, I would really love to. So yeah, that's amazing. Getting back on our track and our focus. So, from your experience and all of this exposure to different countries and so on, and like, it's a similar question to what I asked to Christian. How do you see product discovery, the way that you define it, the way that you evangelize, uh, being applied in a different? Is there a difference of applying your thoughts and your ideas on what you're pitching between different countries, different cultures, different economies, different capabilities that people can work with? Is there a difference of how
Well, this
we
is
could
where it's
apply
important.
this?
So, just to be clear, we've published 3 books for product teams: Inspired, Empowered, and Transform. None of them contain anything that we invented. All
Okay.
we're doing is sharing the techniques that we see used at the best companies, and those companies, those techniques are used at tiny startups to huge, largest enterprises in the world.
Mhm.
Some of them are for consumers, some of them are for businesses, some of them are devices, some of them are regulated. They're all over the map. There are different techniques that we recommend for each situation. So, for example, when we were in Africa, we met with teams. I don't even know how many, at least a dozen different organizations. And some of them were working on financial services, which honestly, the techniques you use in financial services are pretty similar techniques you use all around the world. Other ones were working on things like consumer services, like in travel space. Or some people were working on security devices. There are all kinds of different solutions. Uh, it's not about where in the world you are. It's about what are the risks and what's the best way to overcome those risks. And yes, in developing nations, there's a lot of risk. There's
Yeah,
a lot of risk. So that's what just means why you need good product. If all you think you can do, if you think all you need to do is go copy some American company, you're in for a surprise.
of course.
That almost never works.
Yeah,
It almost never
yeah,
works. So that's why that's why you have those skills and those techniques. But it's important to realize there's not a process, there's not a framework, there's no recipe. What it really is a set of principles that you
Yes.
apply based on the situation. One of the things that Christian really wanted me to see, because he had been telling me about what it's like doing product in Africa for several years, but I had never been there until last year. I had never been to Nigeria. And he said, I want you to see just how the lack of an infrastructure impacts the work
Yes.
we do. And I'm like, that makes total sense. And it's very similar to other parts of the world, like Brazil. I was able to witness in Brazil them in fact, I worked with the original internet company in Brazil. They were just starting. And the big problem was most people didn't have internet access.
Yeah.
So you build the infrastructure, which is what they did. They became a very successful company. And then you start working up the stack. That's I personally love that, and that's what I enjoyed doing in Africa. But I don't think it's really about Africa. It's about the stage the market is in. And one of the benefits of the stage they're in is there are opportunities virtually everywhere.
Yeah, with high risks, high risks represent a lot of opportunities, so
That's
that's
right.
why it's there, and I think like as long as the mindsets are coached and trained and they're developing on how to seize these opportunities, that's the most thing that that would make a difference, right? Yeah. So let's move a little bit and have an eye on the future. And I've watched like a lot of the almost all the podcasts that you've been involved with since the book was published. So I don't remember where did you say this exactly, but like you said that you're writing books that maybe a couple of years ahead of the game, or like looking into the future, trying to foresee how the how things could work, maybe for specific companies and so on. So I wanted to ask you this specifically with everything that has been happening recently with the technology, with Gen AI, and how these advancements, rapid advancements in technology happening. How do you see the role of product evolving with all of that?
Yeah. Well, I think what I was referring to is I try to write so that it will always be relevant. I try to write about
Yeah,
principles and not about frameworks or
yeah,
fads, just principles,
yeah.
because I find those principles will last. Um,
Okay.
in terms of, how the product will change, what you're probably getting at is generative AI, and we'll talk about that. But if we hold that aside for a second, the bigger issue is, will people continue to stay primarily on feature teams, or will they embrace how the best companies work? Obviously, we're
Yeah,
trying everything we can think of to convince people to change to work the way the best companies work. If that happens, then that will change product a lot. I think that
yeah.
would be amazing. It probably won't. It probably won't. Most companies will probably stay the way
Yeah,
they work today. And I
yeah,
understand why. It's because their leaders care more about predictability than they care about innovation. So I
okay,
understand why. I disagree with them, but the nice thing about companies is leaders can run them however they think best.
yeah,
So, and also the good news is when you have a bunch of large companies that are taking care of their customers, it creates opportunities for new companies to come in. And my focus then is on those new companies.
mhm.
So that I think is a big factor on what changes.
Yeah.
Generative AI is
Well,
a major
before,
factor.
sorry, before jumping to generative AI, sorry, I wanted to ask another question here, because recently there has been a couple of companies that are trying to also champion another approach of doing business, and moving away from product management, like, the approach that Airbnb has been taking, for example, claiming that if product is in the every essence of everything that we do in all functions, then we don't need a focused function for product management. So, like, what's your take on that case specifically, or this mindset of moving away from product?
Yeah, well, the truth is, I only know of a couple places that have said that actually,
Yeah, they're
and
not
so
that
I don't
much,
see
but,
it as
like, it's
I don't
yeah.
see it as a trend. But if you double click on what Airbnb did, they didn't remove product management. What
Okay.
they did was they moved it from feature team product managers to the CEO. And so he has taken on those responsibilities personally. Do
Okay.
I think that's a good idea? No. Do I think he's going to regret that move? Yes. but the issue, the role of product management, assessing the value and viability of everything you do, that doesn't go away. It's
Okay.
just a question of who's going to do it.
Okay.
And it's never been the only model for a person called a product manager to do it. A great example is Apple, where their product leaders routinely do that.
Okay.
So yeah, I don't see it as any kind of trend, to be honest, other than
Okay.
there is a lot of frustration around. There's, I think, some real frustration around product teams that don't do very good work. And that's
Mhm.
what Airbnb was responding to.
Okay, great. So let's get back to GenAI.
Generative AI is harder because it is a moving target right now, no question about it. It's easier to talk about how it impacts engineers and designers than how it impacts product managers. For those that are interested, because this is a big topic, I have written several articles about this that talk about the impact of generative AI on both the product teams and also on the products we're building. In terms of the product teams, the engineers are the big winners so far in terms of the technology.
Yeah.
In fact, and it makes sense because there's roughly 10 times the number of engineers as there are product managers. So that makes a lot of sense. And the progress has been terrific. If that continues, I think that we're going to see some real benefits to the engineering role. Of course, the big unknown question is, will this result in net more engineers because they can do more things, or will it result in net less engineers because each engineer is more productive? That is an open question that I don't think anybody knows the answer to. And
Mhm.
honestly, we probably won't know the answer to for at least some number of years. Product design, I think the same thing is happening, but slower. There's a lesser number of designers. Product management is trickier because, back to that problem we discussed earlier, there's two big different kinds of product management. The feature team product managers are really project managers, and I've been warning my friends that work in those kinds of companies that their job is probably at risk.
Yeah.
Because there are already good tools that are just being tested right now that I think will take a lot of that work. On the other hand, if you're a product manager like we're talking about during this call, where you're responsible for value and viability, you could argue that the product management job has never been more important than with generative AI products,
Mhm.
and more difficult. I
Mhm.
wrote about that recently in an article titled AI Product Management. So I don't think that job is going to go away. I think that job becomes more important. And I also think that the skills required to do that job go up.
That's exactly what was going to be my next question. So, like, how does that impact the skill set or the different weight of specific skills that maybe were less important before, but much more important right now? And, like,
Yeah,
how to plan to develop them?
a good example to your question is ethics. Ethics have always been important, but let's just say with generative AI, the ethical issues are much bigger. And so
Yeah, makes
most
sense.
product managers don't have a lot of skills in that area. But I think in the next 5 years, most product managers will need good skills in those areas.
But is it important for product managers to understand how AI really works, like the underlying algorithms and data models and like the actual engine itself, or it it's
I
not
mean,
that important?
how many product managers today could build a computer?
Yeah, right.
Almost none of them. And so, no, I don't think it is. However, you do need to understand the technology, but understanding the technology is not the same as building the technology.
Mhm,
So I am a believer in strongly technical product managers because everything we do is enabled by technology.
mhm,
And there's a lot to understand around the models, around the training of the models, around the explainability of results from these models, around uh, predictive and probabilistic solutions rather than deterministic solutions. If a product manager doesn't understand these technical dynamics, they will not, I don't see how they'll be able to do their job. But that's very different than being able to build the algorithm or
mm,
even build the model or even train the model. They need to understand the concepts, but they don't need to be the expert in that. Now, if you work at OpenAI, you need to understand that.
of course. Okay. Like branching from this, another question that I always like to ask is, it's a very general one. So, what's your take on someone being a specialized product manager in a very specific business area for most of their career, like fintech product managers or AI product managers that we started to see, or like something very specific, or being a generalist product manager that just bounces between different business domains and different specialties? Is there, like, do you have a
Well,
specific opinions about like this versus this?
yeah, although your examples were different. So a fintech product manager is a product manager on a specific type of application.
Yeah.
An AI product manager or a mobile product manager, to me, that's everybody should be today a mobile product manager. Everybody should be an AI product manager tomorrow. So those are kind of different concepts. One is the enabling technology, the other is the
Yeah.
business domain.
Okay.
And I think you can
I asked
learn
about those
the
two types
business
because we
domain.
see both, right? We see technology specialized, like for these titles. So
Yeah,
there is a technology side, and then there is a business domain side, like fintech
right.
or specific.
And I'm trying to say
Things.
everybody
Yeah.
should have the technology sides,
Yeah.
and then you can learn the domains of different domains.
Okay. Makes perfect sense. And last question, just wanted to get some insight from your personal experience and your personal career development. Like you said the stories a lot of times, but I want to ask from the end. Like, if someone is hoping that their product career would lead somehow to coaching or consulting or working, like doing work similar to you because they see or they idolize you or have you as a role model, and they want to do similar work, but now they're just doing the normal product management job. They're counting in years, they're learning, and so on. Is there any advice you would like to share about how to design probably your trajectory in order to transition to this at some point in your career?
Well, I can share the kind of advice I was given, which I'm so grateful for because I listened in this case, which was it doesn't matter when you're, especially for the first 10 years of your career, don't worry about your title. Don't even worry about what company you work at. Worry about who you're going to work for and whether that person knows what good looks like and are they willing to help you learn. So I took jobs where I went from one of the best moves I ever made. I went from a very big chief technology officer, CTO title, down 2 levels because I wanted to learn a different part of the business. And I didn't worry about it because I figured I am still learning all this stuff. This manager I had was wonderful and was interested in teaching me, and I believed I would benefit long term. And so I don't think you should worry so much about the outside. Worry about who are you working for and can they teach you how to be great? If they can, it's a blessing. It really is a wonderful thing. And I take advantage of that. I've been very lucky to work for people. It's not only luck. I mean, I chose this, but I've worked for some very good people that have really taught me a lot. I've also made some mistakes and worked for a couple people that I learned more about how not to lead, but
Mhm.
that's useful too.
You
But
learn
that was
from
not
that too as well.
intentional. That was
Yeah.
more I thought I was doing one thing, and you try to make the best of it. But I was lucky because in the formative years of my career, I did work for some really good people that cared enough about me to help me get better at my job.
Well, great. Seek knowledge and seek to learn more, and everything will come naturally, because that's how you build up experience and you build knowledge that you would be able to give to other people at some point, right? Okay, cool. I could like leverage a conversation with you all day long, but we're strict to the time. We still have a couple of minutes, and I wanted to ask you. Um, Again, like, I'm based in Europe right now, but my background is from Egypt. The main follower base that I have here is from North Africa and the Middle East. Is there anything that you would like to say or to pitch to your audience and your followers from that area?
Well, I hope people will read that book, Transformed, and I actually hope you read about the story based in Saudi Arabia and see the beautiful product work that they were able to do. And I hope that people from that region realize there's no reason they cannot work like the best teams in the world. There's no reason. The
Yeah.
people are talented, the people are smart. They absolutely can work this way if they want to. So I would encourage people to try.
Well, that's great advice, and I assure you that there are some amazing people doing amazing work in these areas and all the other countries as well, not just Saudi Arabia. So, and like the community and the awareness and the will to improve is really soaring there. So, yeah, hoping for the best. Marty, thank you so much for this opportunity, and I hope that you have enjoyed our conversation. I definitely enjoyed it, and I hope that maybe sometime down the line you would come back for another episode.
Well, thanks for inviting me, Omar. I hope people think it's useful.
Thank you so much, sir.